The darkness of space stretched out before them, endless and quiet. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Alina Foster stared out at the black void, her thoughts far away. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound, a constant reminder of their journey into the unknown. For weeks, they had been traveling in the direction of a mysterious signal, one that had appeared out of nowhere, a distress call that seemed to echo across the stars. But the source was unclear, and there was no identifying ship or civilization to answer for it. It was as though the message had come from the very fabric of space itself. "Captain, we're getting close," said Lieutenant Garcia, his voice breaking Alina's train of thought. He stood at the navigation station, his eyes fixed on the readout in front of him. The urgency in his voice was impossible to miss. They had passed the point where normal sensors could detect anything beyond a few light years, but the signal had been growing stronger. Whoever or whatever had sent it was out there, waiting. How much further? Alina asked, her fingers drumming lightly on the edge of the console. She had been trying to keep her mind sharp, but the silence in space had a way of creeping into her thoughts, making everything feel heavy. About 30 minutes at current speed. But Garcia hesitated, his hand hovering over the controls. He turned to face Alina. "There's something else. The signal, it's not just a distress call anymore. It's becoming something else. It's shifting. It's as if it's adapting to our movements, changing its pattern." Alina frowned, stepping over to his side. She leaned in to study the readings. There was no mistaking it. The signal had changed from a simple distress code to something more complex, almost intelligent. It was as though it was aware they were coming. The hairs on the back of Alina's neck stood up. Could it be a trap? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The idea unsettled her. She had fought in battles before, but something about this situation felt different. "It's possible," Garcia said, though his voice lacked certainty. "But there's no way to know for sure until we reach the source." Alina nodded, turning back toward the bridge's viewport. The stars outside looked the same as always, distant pinpricks of light scattered across an infinite sea. But beneath her calm exterior, her mind was racing. The crew of the Valkyrie was trained to face the unknown, but this was unlike anything they had prepared for. A signal, an alien presence that they couldn't trace, couldn't understand. It was unsettling, to say the least. "Captain," Garcia said again, his voice a little strained. "There's something strange about the signal. It's becoming more urgent. I think it wants us to come." Alina didn't respond immediately. She could feel the weight of his words settling over her like a thick fog. The human instinct to help, to answer the call of distress, was at odds with the reality of space travel. In a universe so vast, how could they even begin to comprehend the dangers of what might lie beyond the stars? "Set course for the signal," Alina ordered, her voice firm. "We'll find out what's waiting for us. Prepare the crew for possible contact." This could be big. As the crew scrambled to get the ship into position, Alina took a moment to glance at the holomap on the wall. The location of the signal was in an area of space few had ventured to, deep within the fringes of an uncharted sector. It was close to a dead zone, a region of space where the galaxy's gravitational pull was disrupted by the force of a black hole nearby. "Captain," Lieutenant Alina said, her voice calm but with a hint of concern, "we've crossed into a zone of unknown energy signatures. The ship is reading some disturbances ahead. I think we're nearing the heart of the signal." Alina nodded grimly. "Any sign of hostile activity?" "Not yet, but it's hard to say with the interference," Alina replied, her fingers dancing across the console. "Whatever is out there, it's hiding behind a complex network of energy fields. We can't get a clear read." Alina took a deep breath, preparing herself. "Keep pushing forward. If we turn back now, we may never know what we missed. I need everyone ready for anything. We can't afford to hesitate." The crew worked in unison, their focus unbreakable as they neared the source of the signal. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut through the air. Alina stood tall, her eyes never leaving the viewport. The stars had shifted, no longer just cold lights in the sky, but something darker, more ominous. The unknown loomed ahead, closer than ever. Suddenly, the ship lurched, a violent shudder running through the hull. Alina's heart skipped a beat. The deck trembled, and alarms blared. Echoing through the hallways of the Valkyrie, she gripped the edge of the control panel as the ship veered off course, her knuckles white with tension. "Report," Alina barked, her voice commanding, even as panic began to rise in her chest. "We've crossed into a gravity well, Captain," Alina's voice came back, strained. "The energy surge is overwhelming the ship's systems. We're being pulled toward it." "What the hell is it?" Alina asked, her mind racing. It felt as if the ship was being drawn into a massive unseen force, something far beyond their comprehension. "Unknown," Garcia responded quickly, his eyes flicking across the rapidly changing data. "But it's coming from the source of the signal. Whatever it is, it's not natural. It's—" Before he could finish, the entire ship seemed to shake again, more violently this time. A blinding flash filled the bridge, a surge of light that momentarily overwhelmed the ship's systems. The lights flickered out. The hum of the engines stopped. The Valkyrie was caught in the grip of something vast and powerful. And then the signal, now a pulsating, resonant sound, filled the ship's communication channels. The voice that followed sent a chill down Alina's spine. It was cold, ancient, yet unmistakably intelligent. "Humanity, you have crossed the threshold." The voice seemed to echo in every corner of the ship, vibrating through Alina's very bones. "The time has come. There is no turning back. You will understand soon enough. The stars will never be the same." The transmission cut off as abruptly as it had begun. For a long moment, there was only silence. Alina stood motionless, her mind spinning. The message was clear, but its meaning was far from it. What had they just encountered? And why had the signal been so urgent? Something massive was unfolding, something that would reshape everything they knew. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a challenge. "Captain," Garcia's voice broke the silence. "We're in uncharted space. There's nothing here but void. And that signal, did it just speak to us?" Alina nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving the vast, swirling darkness outside. The message was a warning, a summons, but who or what had sent it? And what did it mean for the crew of the Valkyrie? The adventure they had been prepared for was nothing like this. This wasn't just a mission. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something that could change the course of humanity forever. "Set course for the signal's origin," Alina said, her voice firm with resolve. "Whatever it is, we're going to find out, no matter what it takes." As the Valkyrie broke through the final barrier and hurtled toward the source of the signal, Alina felt a deep, unsettling truth settle in her chest. They were not alone in the universe anymore. And whatever awaited them in the darkness, it would test everything they had ever believed. The Valkyrie sliced through the void, its engines thrumming as it drew closer to the source of the signal. Captain Alina Foster stood at the bridge, her mind racing with questions. What had they stumbled upon? The mystery deepened with each passing moment. The crew worked in tense silence, their fingers dancing over consoles, watching the readouts as the ship's sensors struggled to adjust to the strange energy field surrounding them. "We're nearing the core of the disturbance," Lieutenant Garcia said, his voice trained but calm. He glanced at Alina before looking back at his screen. "Captain, the readings are irregular. The signal is becoming more concentrated. Whatever it is, it's coming from an object, but it's not like anything I've ever seen before." Alina turned to face him, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information. "An object? Can you get a clear visual?" Garcia hesitated, then toggled the controls. A large holographic screen materialized in front of them, displaying a massive structure. An enormous dark mass, suspended in space, surrounded by a glowing energy field. It looked like nothing from human design, a stark contrast to the sleek lines of the Valkyrie and every other spacecraft they had ever encountered. The object had jagged edges, dark spires reaching out as if it were some sort of living, breathing thing. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. There was no doubt about it. This was not something built by any civilization they knew. It's like a weapon, Garcia murmured. But no human race, no known alien species, would build something like this. It's as though it was made to consume, to destroy everything around it. Can you get a closer look? Elena asked, her voice unwavering, despite the unease settling in her stomach. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Adjusting course now, Garcia replied, tapping away at the navigation panel. As the ship edged closer, the energy field around the structure fluctuated, the lights shifting in eerie patterns. The sensors flickered, cutting in and out as if the ship was being pulled in by an unseen force. Elena could feel the weight of it, a slow, suffocating pressure that seemed to fill the room. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently. The warning lights blared, and alarms pierced the air. The entire crew jolted, their seats buckling beneath them. Elena gripped the armrests, her eyes wide as she saw the readings on the main display. "We're being dragged in," Garcia shouted over the noise. "The gravitational pull is too strong. We can't break free." "Shut down the engines," Elena barked. "Do anything to stop us from getting pulled closer." But it was too late. The Valkyrie was no longer under their control. The pull of the object was too strong, the ship's momentum too great. The crew was helpless as they were drawn toward the dark, jagged structure. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. They were trapped. Her mind raced for a solution, but nothing came to her in that moment. The crew scrambled at their stations, trying everything they could to regain control, but there was no escaping the magnetic force of the anomaly. With a final, spine-jarring lurch, the Valkyrie was pulled into the energy field. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, metal creaking as if protesting the intrusion. The crew fought to stay upright as the lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows across their faces. "Get us out of this field," Elena shouted to Garcia, who was furiously working to regain control of the ship. I can't, Captain. The systems are going haywire. The field's interference is too strong." Garcia's hands moved over the controls in a blur, but it was as if the Valkyrie was being held in place by some invisible hand. Elena turned, her gaze darting between her crew, watching the panic begin to rise. This wasn't just a random signal anymore. It was something far worse, something that had now ensnared them. "Captain," Lieutenant Elena called from the communications station. She was tapping furiously at the console. "We've got incoming transmission. It's the same voice we heard before." "Put it through," Elena ordered, her voice low. The bridge fell silent as the voice filled the space again. This time, it was clearer, more distinct. "You are too late. You have crossed the line. There is no escape now. You belong to us." The voice was chilling, calm, almost too calm, as if it had known their every move before they had even made it. Elena's blood ran cold. She had expected a fight, a confrontation, but nothing prepared her for the realization that they weren't just being attacked, they were being absorbed. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. Elena could hear the crew's breaths, shallow and quick, filling the room. She couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping over her. Whoever, or whatever, was behind this was toying with them. They weren't simply in danger. They were being controlled, manipulated, drawn into a trap that was much more elaborate than they could have imagined. "Captain," Elena's voice broke through the tension. "I'm reading something strange. The ship's systems, they're still functioning, but they're being altered. The readings, the ship's internal communications, even the life support systems are being hijacked." "What do you mean, hijacked?" Elena asked, her voice tight with fear. "It's as if someone is inside the ship's core," Elena replied, her fingers flying across the console as she tried to isolate the source. Something is controlling the ship's internal systems remotely. Alina's mind reeled. Could this object somehow be controlling the Valkyrie as well? It was the only explanation that made sense. She glanced at her crew, seeing the same thoughts reflected in their eyes. "We need to get off this ship," Lieutenant Garcia said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If this thing can control us, we'll be dead in a matter of hours. We don't know what it's capable of." Alina shook her head, her decision firm. "We're not abandoning ship, not yet. We need answers. There has to be a way to break free from this control. We're going to find it, and we're going to stop whatever this is." But as she spoke the words, a new realization dawned upon her. They weren't just dealing with an alien ship or even an enemy. They were dealing with something much more insidious, an intelligence that was capable of taking over not only ships, but entire civilizations. And now it was their turn to fall. The screen in front of them flickered again, revealing a new image, a terrifying sight. There, standing at the heart of the energy field, was a vast structure, pulsing with energy. It looked alive. Its form twisted and shifted, as if it was something organic, not mechanical. Alina stared at it, her heart hammering in her chest. Whatever they had found in the depths of space was beyond anything they had ever imagined. And as the realization settled over her, she knew with a sickening certainty that they had just stumbled upon something ancient, something powerful, something that could change the very fabric of the galaxy. "Prepare yourselves," Alina said, her voice steady, but filled with resolve. "Whatever happens next, we face it together. We find a way out. We survive. And we make them pay for what they've done to us." But as the ship continued to drift toward the pulsing structure, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they had already lost. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Valkyrie was now fully within the grip of the unknown structure. The ship seemed almost alive as it strained against the unseen forces pulling it deeper into the field. Captain Alina Foster stood motionless at the bridge, her mind in overdrive, trying to piece together the terrifying reality of what they had stumbled upon. "Captain, we're caught," Lieutenant Garcia said, his voice grim. "The gravitational field is fluctuating too much. We're being pulled in further with no way to break free." Alina's jaw tightened as she fought against the sense of helplessness creeping up. She could feel her pulse quicken as the ship groaned under the strain of the unseen forces. The crew worked furiously at their stations, tapping into every resource they had, but every attempt to break free was met with failure. The unknown object outside the ship seemed to be feeding off their efforts, amplifying the pull with each passing second. "Status," Alina demanded, her voice unwavering despite the anxiety that simmered beneath the surface. "We're losing control of the ship's systems, Captain," Lieutenant Alina said from her console. "Our navigational controls, comms, even the life support. Everything's being overridden. Something is hijacking the ship's core functions. I've never seen anything like this before. How much time do we have before we're fully compromised?" Alina asked, her eyes scanning the faces of her crew. Alina looked at the readouts, her face pale. "It's hard to say. The interference is unlike anything we've encountered. If this keeps up, we could lose everything in the next few hours. We may not even have that long." The reality of their situation began to settle in. This wasn't just an alien artifact or an unknown weapon. This was something far worse. They were no longer just explorers or soldiers on a mission. They were prey. "Prepare an emergency evacuation protocol," Alina ordered, her voice firm. "Everyone needs to be ready to abandon ship. But we're not leaving just yet. We need to figure out how to fight back." Garcia gave her a sharp look. "Captain, we may not have time. We need to make a decision now before it's too late." Alina turned toward the viewport, her gaze drawn once more to the enormous, shifting structure outside. The jagged spires of the object seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, and Alina couldn't shake the feeling that the ship itself was alive, watching them, drawing them closer. It wasn't just a structure. It was a trap, one that was closing in around them with a deliberate, calculated pace. "Let's give it one more try," Alina said, her voice steady, though the sense of urgency hung heavy in the air. "Take us closer to the object. If we can get a better look, we might find some weak point, something we can exploit." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but there was no time to hesitate. They had no other option but to push forward, to try and understand the nature of this impossible situation. The Valkyrie lurched forward once more, pulled inexorably toward the object. The energy field surrounding it was unlike anything they had encountered. It seemed to twist and churn, a living, breathing thing, feeding off their ship's power and sending waves of destabilizing energy through the entire vessel. Alina's stomach churned as the ship's systems continued to fluctuate, the interior lights flickering in and out. "Captain," Garcia shouted, his voice alarmed. "The energy field. It's going to cause a meltdown if we don't act fast. We're running out of time." Alina's mind raced. She had to think fast. The ship was being torn apart. Whatever this object was, it was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. There had to be a way to break free, a way to disrupt the connection between the Valkyrie and the strange force pulling them in. Then, as if on cue, the ship's communication system flared back to life. The cold, haunting voice they had heard before echoing through the bridge. "You are the last. The others have fallen. You are now ours. You will be absorbed, just as they were." The voice was icy and emotionless, but there was something more sinister in it now. There was no trace of pity or fear, only the certainty of the inevitable. Alina's blood ran cold as the words sank in. Whoever, or whatever, was behind this had done this before. This wasn't their first time. It was a pattern, a strategy, a process that had been repeated over and over. And now, it was their turn. She looked at her crew, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They couldn't just give up. She refused to let them. She had to keep them fighting, keep them alive. They had come too far to be consumed by this alien force. "Alina, can you track the signal source?" Alina asked, her voice tight with focus. Alina's fingers flew over her console, her eyes scanning the data. "I'm trying, Captain, but the interference is..." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The entire bridge rattled, and Alina had to steady herself against the sudden jolt. The lights flickered again, casting dark shadows across the room. "Sir," Garcia shouted from the navigation station, "we've entered the core's gravitational pull. We're locked in. We can't escape." Alina's mind raced. There was no way they were going down without a fight. "Everyone, brace for impact," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare for manual override. We're going to fight back, no matter what it takes." But as soon as she said it, the ship's systems locked up completely, and they were left at the mercy of whatever force controlled the alien structure. The crew could feel it now, the deep, suffocating pull of the object, almost like a predator closing in on its prey. The voice echoed again, growing louder, more commanding this time. "Humanity will be consumed. All will be absorbed. Your struggle is futile." Alina clenched her fists. "We'll see about that," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. She wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance to fight. The crew gathered around her, their eyes filled with determination. Alina knew that the path ahead would not be easy, and it might very well be the end for all of them. But there was one thing they could do. They could go down fighting. And if they were going to face whatever this alien intelligence was, they would do so with every ounce of strength they had left. Just then, the Valkyrie lurched again. But this time, it was different. The ship shook violently, as if it had hit an invisible barrier. The entire bridge was thrown into darkness. Then the lights came back on, flickering, unstable, but something had changed. Something was different. Alina's eyes widened as she saw the shift on the screen in front of her. The massive alien structure was beginning to pulse, reacting to something inside the Valkyrie. It was as if they had triggered something, Or perhaps it was the ship itself that was beginning to fight back. Alina's heart raced. "Garcia, do you feel that?" she asked, almost breathless. Garcia nodded, his face grim. "Something's happening. The ship is adapting. The systems are reconnecting. It's like we're fighting it from the inside." Alina didn't know what had just occurred, but she wasn't going to waste the opportunity. "Everyone, hold your positions. We may have just found our way out." They weren't finished yet, and the Valkyrie wasn't going down without one hell of a fight. The Valkyrie groaned as the alien energy continued to course through its systems. For a moment, the crew held their breath, wondering if the brief surge of resistance had been a fluke. But as the ship stabilized, a spark of hope flickered in Alina's chest. The impossible was happening. They were fighting back. The alien force wasn't invincible. They had a chance. "Alina, what's happening with the ship's core?" Alina demanded, her eyes narrowing as she tried to make sense of the readouts flashing across the holographic screens. "The core, it's realigning itself with the ship's main systems," Alina said, her voice laced with disbelief. "It's like the ship's AI is learning how to adapt to the interference. I think it's using the alien field's energy to power itself. We might be able to use it against them." Alina felt a rush of adrenaline. They had been handed a rare opportunity, a fleeting moment where the tides might turn in their favor. "Can we override the ship's core to regain control of the ship?" Alina asked, glancing at Garcia, who was monitoring the ship's navigational systems. "We're close, Captain. But we need to disable the energy feedback loop coming from the alien object," Garcia said, his fingers moving over the controls rapidly. "If we can sever the connection, we'll have full control again." Alina nodded, a determined smile playing on her lips. They weren't going down without a fight. But the stakes had just become far more dangerous. It wasn't just the Valkyrie they had to save now. It was their entire crew. And if they failed, it wasn't just their lives on the line. It was the fate of humanity. The eerie voice filled the room once more, but this time, it sounded more strained, more desperate. "You cannot escape. You cannot break free. Your kind is weak. No match for us." Alina's resolve only hardened at the alien's words. "Weak," she whispered, barely audible. "We'll see about that." She turned to her crew. "Garcia, you know what to do. Alina, stay on that transmission. Figure out how they're controlling us. We can't afford to make any mistakes now." Garcia's hands flew over the console as he inputted the commands to sever the connection. But just as his fingers hovered over the final key, the ship jolted again, this time with a force that sent them all tumbling. The ship's hull screamed in protest, and the air was filled with the acrid scent of burning circuits. The Valkyrie was being battered from all sides, as if the alien structure was physically assaulting them. "We've been hit," Garcia shouted over the noise, barely able to hold his station. "The energy field is getting stronger. We're not just being pulled in anymore. They're actively attacking us." The Valkyrie shuddered once more, its systems flickering as the ship's power seemed to surge uncontrollably. Alina's eyes locked onto the main display, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time itself had slowed. The alien structure outside pulsed again, but this time, its glow was bright, almost blinding. Then, an unexpected thing happened. The ship's eye, the one they had so desperately relied on, spoke. "Captain, I have detected a breach in the foreign energy field. I am redirecting the ship's power to the disruptor array. Please stand by." A sudden calm washed over Alina as she processed the eye's words. The ship's systems weren't just fighting the alien signal. They were actively working against it. The Valkyrie's internal systems, linked with the eye's sophisticated algorithms, had found a way to counteract the alien force. Alina didn't have to do everything manually anymore. The ship was becoming its own weapon. But they still had to be careful. The ship might be able to fight back, but the alien entity wasn't going to give up easily. "Garcia, get us clear of the gravitational field," Alina ordered. "The Valkyrie is not going to take much more of this." "Working on it," Garcia responded quickly, his brow furrowed in concentration. He adjusted the ship's trajectory as best as he could, but the alien interference was still strong. The ship groaned again as it fought against the magnetic pull. It was an agonizing dance. Each movement forward met with a stronger pull from the alien structure. Power levels are critical, Alina warned, her voice tense. We have just enough power to break free, but not much more. If we don't act now, we'll be stuck here indefinitely. Hold on, Alina shouted, her voice rising above the chaos in the bridge. The tension was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. They were so close, just a little more, and they could break free. And then, the unexpected happened. The alien structure released its grip. The pull weakened, the gravitational field receded, and the Valkyrie surged forward, free from the energy field's clutches. It felt like they had been freed from an invisible hand that had been choking them, and they shot forward into the darkness of space, away from the menacing structure. The crew exhaled in relief, but the battle was far from over. Are we clear of the field? Alina asked, her voice steady despite the wave of exhaustion threatening to overtake her. Yes, Captain, Garcia said, his voice filled with disbelief. We've made it out. We're clear. Alina allowed herself a brief moment of relief, but only for a moment. Alina, are we still receiving the transmission? She asked, turning toward her communications officer. Alina's fingers were moving swiftly across her console as she processed the data. Yes, Captain. But it's different now. It's more fragmented, like it's being disrupted from their end. We might have just given them a shock they didn't expect. Good, Alina said, a dark smile forming on her lips. Let's see how they like it. The voice from the alien entity crackled through the speakers, but this time it was distorted, as though the transmission was breaking apart under pressure. You will not escape. Humanity will fall. The transmission was cut off suddenly, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. We've got one shot at this, Alina said, her voice hard. Garcia, chart a course. Alina, I need to know everything about this structure. Every piece of data we have. We need to know where it came from and how to destroy it. No more surprises. The crew nodded, but their expressions were grave. They knew what was coming next. The Valkyrie had won a battle, but this was just the beginning. The alien threat was far from over, and whatever they had faced was only a fraction of the horrors lurking out in the galaxy. But Captain Alina Foster wasn't about to back down. She had seen humanity's greatest strengths and its greatest flaws. And right now, she knew exactly what humanity needed to do. They needed to fight. The Valkyrie would lead the charge. The silence in the bridge was deafening. The Valkyrie was adrift in the black void of space, the crew's eyes glued to their monitors, still processing what had just transpired. They had broken free, yes, but it was clear that this was far from over. The alien force, whatever it was, had shown them only a fraction of its power. And that power had merely been their undoing. Captain, Garcia said, his voice steady but laced with urgency, we've got to move quickly. That alien structure, it's still out there, and I'm willing to bet it's not going to leave us alone. Alina nodded, feeling the weight of his words. They had made it out of the immediate danger, but it wasn't enough. There was no escape. Not yet. We're not just dealing with an artifact or a weapon, Alina said, her voice firm. This is a sentient force, a presence, something that thinks. And whatever it is, it wants us gone. It sees humanity as a threat, a resource. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear that Alina's words had struck a chord. Humanity had never faced anything like this before. Alien species, yes. Ancient artifacts, yes. But something that acted with intelligence, with purpose, was a whole different ballgame. What's our plan, Captain? Alina asked, her voice low but full of determination. She knew there was no going back now. They had to finish what they had started. Elena turned to the screen, watching the star-filled void stretch endlessly before them. The unknown object, though far behind, was still within range. Its shape was hauntingly symmetrical, like a living creature floating just out of reach, waiting for them to come back. "We're not done yet," Elena said, more to herself than anyone else. "We need to hit it where it hurts. We need to learn everything we can about this thing, and we need to find a way to destroy it. And we need to do it before it decides to finish what it started." "Agreed," Garcia said, his eyes glued to his console. "The energy field we're dealing with. It's far beyond anything we've encountered before, but I think we can turn its power against it. We'll have to use every resource the Valkyrie has left, but it can be done." Elena walked slowly to the center of the bridge, feeling the weight of every decision on her shoulders. The crew, every single one of them, was looking to her for leadership, for a way out, and she wasn't about to let them down. "Elena, I need everything we've gathered on that alien structure. Any detail we can use, any piece of information that might help us fight back." Elena immediately tapped a few keys, bringing up a holographic display of the object. "We've got some data on the structure's energy signatures, but the field is still disrupting our scans. It's like the structure itself is alive, adapting to every move we make." Elena nodded, her eyes narrowing as she observed the data. "If it's alive, then it has a weakness. Everything has a weakness. We just need to find it." She turned back to Garcia. "Get the weapons systems ready. I want to be prepared to strike if we get close enough. If we can't take it down with force, we'll find another way." Garcia nodded and began inputting commands, but there was a hesitation in his movements. "Captain," he said slowly, "I don't think we fully understand what we're dealing with. It might be too advanced, too dangerous to confront head-on." Elena turned sharply to face him. "I don't intend to confront it head-on, Garcia. But we can't just sit here and wait for it to come for us again. We need to be proactive. We need to find its weaknesses and exploit them before it finds ours." Garcia's eyes flicked toward the viewports. "I just don't want to take the risk of playing into its hands. We're not exactly in a position to fight it outright." Elena took a deep breath, then placed a hand on Garcia's shoulder. "I know the odds are against us. But if we don't act, if we don't fight back now, we lose. Everything we've worked for, everything humanity stands for, it all ends here. There's no other choice." A moment of silence passed. The crew, each one of them, understood the gravity of the situation. The threat wasn't just to them. It was to everyone they had ever known. To Earth. To humanity's future in the stars. "Prepare to jump into position," Elena ordered. "We need to find the heart of that thing, and we need to do it now. I won't let humanity be erased. Not by this. Not by anyone." The crew's eyes hardened with resolve. They weren't just defending a ship now. They were defending their entire species. Humanity had just been awakened to a new terrifying reality, and it was up to them to make sure the rest of the galaxy remembered one thing. Humans weren't easy to defeat. The Valkyrie powered up, the hum of the engines vibrating through the hull. The alien structure loomed in the distance, waiting for them, and for the first time, the crew felt a flicker of confidence. They weren't the prey anymore. The Valkyrie wasn't going down without a fight. As they closed in on the structure, Elena's mind raced. They had a plan, yes, but they had no way of knowing if it would work. They could try to disable its power, try to destroy its core, but the risks were monumental. The alien intelligence could adapt. It could turn their own weapons against them. The battle they were about to face was unlike anything they had ever seen. "Hold steady," Elena said. "We need to be precise. One shot, one chance." The crew moved in, silent and determined. And as the Valkyrie neared the alien structure once more, Elena felt something deep inside her stir. This was humanity's moment. The moment when they would prove that no force, no matter how advanced or powerful, would ever break them. With one final command, the Valkyrie fired. The stars around them exploded into light as the ship's weapons lashed out, striking the core of the alien structure. A deafening silence followed. Then, slowly, the alien force began to waver. The energy field destabilized. The ship's sensors began to show cracks in the structure. It was working. But this battle was far from over, and the Valkyrie would fight until the very end.